Let's take a look at the new P2 CO2 laser engraver from xTool.
All right, let's talk about some of the features of the P2, and this is a long list because this is kind of a feature-rich machine. So first and foremost, you have a 26 by 14 working area, which kind of out of the gate is bigger than most of the lasers, LED-based lasers that I've tested in the past, except those that have an expansion kit with them. So out of the box, this one is larger. It does have the dual 16mm cameras. I found myself using the main one that's in the back. It does have one that's actually on the head that will go and take a close-up image of the material. I did find that those images don't necessarily line up exactly. I have inquired about that, but I have not gotten an answer back yet, so just know that. I have had no problem just using the main 16mm camera that's in the back that shows the entire bed. That one seemed to be spot on as far as the position of the machine goes. This is a 55-watt CO2 laser, so it's not an LED-based machine, obviously, and that just puts it in a different bracket as far as its speed, its capabilities, the fact that it can do glass and acrylic, clear acrylic. That's kind of a big deal. This unit has built-in air assist, so there's no other thing sitting around that you have to plumb into the machine. It's all self-contained. It has the ability to do a pass-through feature. They have kind of an outrigger that goes with this machine that allows you to do longer material to kind of traverse it through the machine. That's an accessory that we may look at later on. It has the ability to do curved surface, and that this is my first CO2 machine, so I don't know if there's a comparable machine out there that does that kind of in this price range, but that's interesting to say the least. We'll hopefully look at that in a future video. This does have the ability out of the box to work with Lightburn, and they do have a link for you to download the configuration file for Lightburn. That is definitely something we're going to look at in a future video. This can do batch engraving. With the software that they've got in the machine, you can actually go out and just set up an entire job that's got multiples of things, so that makes production a whole lot easier, especially with the larger work area. This is advertised to do 20mm acrylic in one pass. I don't have 20mm acrylic to test that with. Maybe in the future, maybe not. It depends on if I can find some, but that's interesting to say the least. I think I mentioned this before, but it is rotary capable. I have a cable that should allow me to connect either the flat, the first version rotary, or the RA2 rotary. We'll use that in a future video. This unit has the lid lock on it, so you can't open it while it's doing a job or while it's doing kind of the post-job exhaust of the fumes. I think that's a great feature. It has the nice gas lid supports on it, so that makes opening and closing very easy, and it holds it up. It does have a big fat e-stop on the side, on this side that you can't see out of the shot, so if anything is going sideways, you could always hit that button to make that stop. This unit is fire suppression capable. It has a communication port as well as a hose connector on the back to use the xTool fire suppression system, so that is also a nice add. There's a lot more features. I think I skipped over its max engrave. It's 600mm a second, and you've seen in some of the shots, or you will see in some of the shots, just how fast this thing is whipping back and forth. So those are some of the key features. All right, let's briefly talk about what came with the P2. Now, in order to get the machine up and running, you have to fill it with coolant. Unlike some of the other machines that are out there, some of the other less expensive machines, this doesn't require an external cooling system. It's all self-contained, and in order to make that happen, we have to mix up a little ratio of antifreeze and water. You don't necessarily have to, depending on where you live, but in my case, I'm in the South. We had a really good cold snap last year, and I don't really want to take any chances, so I did mix up kind of the lowest concentration of antifreeze and water. And that was very easy to do. This back cover on the machine that you can barely see in the shot, it comes off with 11 screws, 6 on the front, 5 on the back, and that reveals kind of where the magic happens of this machine. You see the laser tube, you can see the power supply, and you can see the storage tank where the coolant goes. And so using the recipe inside the manual that came with the machine, I mixed up a 20% ratio and went ahead and funneled it into the container. They tell you to start the machine up after you do that initial fill to let the system kind of circulate that coolant and get some of the air out of the system, and then you top it off with an additional amount of purified water. You will need something that measures in milliliters that will help you do this faster. Once I did that, screwed the cap back on, screwed the back plate back on, and I was ready to go. So they include the funnel to help you not make a mess if you're so inclined. Some other items that were included is I have this cable. This will allow me to use one of the xTool rotaries with the laser in a future video, so we'll check that out soon. It also has these 4 little aluminum clips. Now these are very low profile, very nice. They actually clip onto the slats of the bed, and they can hold down flat materials like craft paper, price tags, different things like that, stuff that might get blown around just by the action of the machine. We have a few spare screws and an Allen wrench, and as far as the utility of the machine, it also came with a length of this very nice exhaust hose. This is not your typical aluminized plastic. It's a lot heavier duty than that. It's got this nice kind of pinch ring that holds it onto the exhaust port on the back of the machine. And then we have a USB to USB-C cable is what my computer is using to talk to the P2, and then we have a very heavy-duty power cord. So they also included some sample material. So there's a sample pack of, I believe, 5 pieces of corrugated cardboard. We have 4 pieces of 3mm bass plywood, and then we also have 2, looks like roughly 12-inch square pieces of cast acrylic. That looks to be about 1/8 thick, roughly. So that's enough material definitely to get you started and let you see what the machine's capable of. All right, so this is always one of my favorite parts, and that's what I was able to do with the machine. And my first impression, and I don't know if I've included that clip in the video, but my first impression was a pretty kind of wow moment, because I just randomly grabbed a gear out of the software, and it had double lines on it, and it blew right through this. I've never seen a machine do it that fast, and it's kind of hard to describe, but the cut, it's off color, but it doesn't look burnt, and so that was kind of interesting. I'm used to just stuff being scorched. Now when we got to thicker material, that impression changes, because the longer you're in the cut, the more you're effectively burning the material. But this turned out fantastic. Even something as thin as that piece, and the kerf of the laser is so fine that when you put them back together, it's more of an artistic detail than it is a gap. Hard to explain, but anyway, I found that to be fantastic. So we'll start with kind of the wood stuff that I've done. So we've seen this before in a previous video for a different laser, but this turned out fantastic. There's extremely little overburn. It just cuts this. This is 2.7mm plywood. It just cuts this so fast that it really turns out fantastic. Did a couple of these, are I think probably my second jobs, just playing around trying to get a feel for the effect of the laser. Again, it doesn't look burnt. It almost looks colored. There's a little bit, you can kind of feel it, and I kept having to play with the settings to kind of get what I wanted to be able to get, like a darker image. This is actually a piece of cork. Just for reference, this took 2 minutes and 47 seconds. I believe, yeah, this took 2 minutes and 50 seconds. That I would have to go back and look at one of my other videos, but that's a night and day difference as far as speed of the job. We've got this little tile here, 1:34 for something like that. Anything else? Wood. Let's just talk about this. So, of course, I had to put a thick piece of material in there, and this is comparable to the acrylic dimension that they referenced. This is like 19mm, roughly 3/4 of an inch, and it cut it. As you can tell, it took me 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 tries. And two of the other ones were super close. They were so close to passing through. But again, you're fighting the wood grain, so it's always kind of a variable, but it did do it. I don't think you should, but you can. It's kind of my same stance on the LED-based machines. Just because you can cut a 2x4 or a 1-inch piece of material doesn't mean that's the right tool for the job. So take that for what it's worth. Some of the other stuff, I did a black painted aluminum business card and a blue anodized card. These took roughly 5 minutes, 52 seconds to do. And I was using basic stock settings of the machine. And I found that to be the true for most of them, except for a couple of wood tests that I did when I was looking for how deep of an engraving I could get on the wood, or how much I could cut through it. So I did tweak the settings on these, but most everything else is just taking the defaults, finding a comparable material, and just letting the machine go. We did some leather, and this should be symmetrical, and it's not. And this is where I found the misalignment of the close-up camera, not the main camera, but the close-up camera. It actually truncated or cut high on the material, so I didn't get the exact part that I was looking for. And this is where I learned that lesson, that I needed to kind of focus on the main bed camera because it seems to be more accurate as far as positioning. And so that's what I ended up doing. So this was the first and only oopsie that I had as far as positioning goes. It also did some engraving on here, which will be easier to see in the close-up shot. This was faster, this was slower. The effect was completely different. So again, trying to understand how the laser works with the existing materials. I can't stress enough, anytime you're doing a job, especially if you're trying to use this to make money, you need to do test jobs before you do the real job so you don't ruin materials that you need. I think this took like 34 seconds to cut this. I mean, it was blasting right through it. On the engraving, I don't really have the time on that, but it was quicker than most. Let's move on to some paper type products. So as I did in the close-up, kind of showing you how easy it is to use the machine, I made this stencil, this little Dav's stuff stencil out of some craft paper. It blew through that. I believe it was almost a minute 30 for that. So that was easy. We did the thicker craft paper tag, and even with this tiny font and the little pieces that are being held in by the stencil font, it did beautifully on that. I did clip this down because I knew once the machine started, this would just fly off the bed somewhere. So I used the included clips to hold that down with no issue. Another image that I did, I forgot, in wood. This was actually an AI created image. My son and I had gone to a car show in town, and for whatever reason, steampunk VW Beetle popped into my head, and I put that into their AI graphic image creation system. And it's not really steampunky, but it is cool. It didn't come across in the material that well because this is a really lighter wood, and I think if I hit it with some lacquer or something like that, it'll probably pop a little bit better, but it's extremely detailed. This took 9 minutes, 17 seconds to do that full image. So that was pretty good. I've done some acrylic. This is actually the remains of an LED sign that I made for my daughter, and it's like it's not even there. It cuts this so fast, I can't remember exactly the time, but, and this sign right here, the world's greatest dad. This was an interesting one because I found that on acrylic, if I do, and this is probably extremely hard for y'all to see, but if I do the score instead of the engrave, it kind of gives it a fuzz to it, and it really makes it pop when you've got an LED light for it. And that just, and I'm not boasting here. This is not me. I'm just doing that because we're close to Father's Day. So one of the other things, I'll save those for last because those are cool. So one of the other things is I have this piece of hardwood flooring. This is an extremely heavy chunk. I don't know what species of wood this is, but what I did was I was doing this just number 7, and I started at 15% power, and this is moving at 300 millimeters a second. So 15%, 30, 45, 60, 75%, and it just progressively goes down. It goes down by roughly 0.1 millimeter every time I do it. I think this one ended up kind of in the like 0.4, 0.046 or something like that. But I was looking to see how you can get that depth to it, almost like a sandblast etch kind of depth. And so I was just playing around with that. Surely if you go slower, if you give it full power, you'll get faster results. But I was just using this as kind of a gradient to kind of test. And I really like the way it looks because it doesn't burn away the grain evenly. It's not like a CNC machine where it's cutting it flat. It has a grainy texture to the bottom because it's fighting the natural material. So that was a cool test. And I should have mentioned this before, but again, I can't do clear acrylic with anything else that I have. So the fact that I can cut and etch and make fixtures and little tools and different things like that, that's kind of cool now. The other thing that's cool is that it does glass. And so I did this bee on this glass coaster, and that was super quick. I don't really remember it off the hand, but you can feel that in the glass, and it turned out fantastic. It would be so easy to make great gifts with this machine. So lastly, and you see that I cut out the xTool P2, that was one of the first jobs. I think I did that one at the same time I did these, all in the same job. And so look how delicate that is. I'm gonna hold it over to the side so you can see it, and then I'll probably have a close-up. That took 20 minutes, but look at all those cuts in that. 20 minutes, 16 seconds is what that took. If you had somebody that was doing scrapbooking, if you were making announcement cards, gift tags, the detail and the speed, I mean, I don't know what that would take on a LED-based machine, but it's not gonna be done in 20 minutes. But that turned out beautifully. And then we've seen this image before. This is kind of like a sugar skull. I can't remember what it's called, but I'm sure somebody can put it down below and remind me of what this is called. But I just love this image and the detail that's in it. And I did it on this piece of MDF, and it turned out fantastic. All right, let's quickly go over the pros and the cons. So pros, superb build quality. This machine is, if you saw the xTool D1 original video that I did for xTool, I was impressed with the way it went together. I was impressed with the squareness, the fit and the finish. Everything was right and tight. I had a lot of positives to say about the quality because I was used to dealing with the kind of extrusion-based machines. This is a fit and finish detail level way higher than that xTool D1 or even the xTool D1 Pro. This is self-contained. It looks good. It aesthetically looks good. It's got clean lines. There's no nonsense on it. It's fully functional. It just looks right. It looks like it was intentionally made well. The quality, how everything fits together, the materials. The only caveat to that would be the top is a smoke acrylic lid. I think I don't know if it's acrylic or polycarbonate, but I would imagine that could get scratched if you slid stuff across it. So I've actually got a cover on top of it just so I don't knock the new off the machine. That would be a little bit of a gripe, but I'm sure that's just a function of price and fragility as well. The fact that this arrived undamaged, it was in a very large box. I think its shipping weight was I think slated at 125 pounds. And it had a kind of a skid that it was sitting on with a very thick foam pad. And then it had a foam kind of cover that goes on it. And then it has a cardboard cover, had corner protectors all the way around, heavy cardboard corner protectors, had shipping straps going this way and this way. When I went to pick it up, my heart kind of sank because it was sitting up like this. They're clearly on the side of the unit, it says fragile, this side up. You know, the shipping company didn't care, my receiver didn't care. And I was pleasantly surprised once I took all the stuffing out of it and the cocoon that it was in, that it arrived unharmed, even with the box having some damage to it. Kudos to xTool for making sure that you could get your product successfully in most cases. So that's good. Comes with everything you need but purified water. And we've already gone over the accessories, so that was good. Works with light burn. We'll test that in a future video. Was pleasantly surprised to see how easy and functional the xTool software was, as you have already seen. The fact that this works with a rotary, we can use the RA2, which is the one that's got the, you can do the 2 rollers or you can do the rotary chuck. We'll use that in a future video. We've got the adapter cable for that. All the sample materials that were included, the corrugated cardboard, the 3mm plywood, and the 2 pieces of acrylic, that gives you a lot to play with right off the jump to kind of get a feel for the machine. So that's a good add. Sturdy aluminum inner frame. Now, the outside of this is high quality plastic. The inside, and you can see it in probably some of the shots that I took of the laser tube, you've got aluminum frame. Inside the work area of the machine, you've got the aluminum slats, the aluminum bed, the carriage, the gantry, all that stuff. It's all metal. It worked out nicely, and it's very high quality. No external cooling required. I did not want to have a 5-gallon bucket with a fish aquarium pump in it circulating water through this thing. The fact that it's all in here is great. I've only seen the temperature get up to 28 degrees Celsius, and that was when I was trying to cut this. And so this was a long dwell time in the cut, as well as several attempts. And 28 Celsius, not a big deal. It's ambient is usually around 25, 26 in here, so 28 degrees was no big deal. The work area, 26 by 14, that's a good size. There are LED lasers that have a bigger footprint if you use an expansion kit. Cuts clear acrylic. I never knew that I would like that so much. I tried cutting acrylic on a LED machine, and the fumes were terrible, just terrible. And I even had a respirator on, and that was the first and last time I was ever going to do that with an LED-based machine. With this machine, with the exhaust system running, no issues. And the fact that I can do clear and not just dark acrylic is awesome. The fact that we can do glass, that's clear glass, that's something new. Never been able to do that before without any additional pre-work or whatever. I basically just threw the coaster on there and said go. I didn't have to do anything special to it. All the accessories, I talked about the pass-through system, the fire suppression system, the rotaries, the 2 different rotaries that you can use with the machine. They've got a lot of accessories. There's even a riser to give you more depth on the machine if you're doing thicker stuff. So they've got a good kind of ecosystem for the machine. Let's talk about cons. So price is going to be one of the first ones that people balk at. I believe this unit is right around $4,000 base. That's a lot, you know, but okay, so let's look at the xTool 40-watt LED machine, smaller work area, smaller height. Does it have all the advanced features like the camera? This even has an auto measure where it'll go over and actually measure the material, give you an approximate measure of the material. I didn't even talk about that yet. That's a huge kind of pro. But you got accessories, or you got abilities that you've never had before in this machine. And the fact that it's all self-contained, you'll have to be the judge if that makes financial sense for you. But if you had a sign shop, if you had a business, a craft shop, you were running crafts fairs, different things like that, doing custom gifts online, this could be a game changer for you. The speed and the power is really, and then just the entire ecosystem built around it, that has value. A big con, the biggest con that I see right now is the misalignment between the high-res or the detail camera and then the overall camera. The workaround was to not use the detail camera, but I found that the overall image from the camera in the back that shows the entire bed, that was more than adequate to get good, predictable results and have them positioned correctly to do the job. So, but that other camera should be aligned. They should be synced somehow. The built-in fan, I believe this is rated at 145 CFM if I remember correctly. If you have a long distance of hose attached to it like I do, I basically have their 3-inch pipe going into a 4-inch pipe, going into a 6-inch pipe that's about 12 feet that way, and it's probably, I don't know, 25 feet of hose easily, maybe probably 30 if I'm being honest. That's a tough draw for a 145 CFM fan that's built into this box to be able to push all that all the way out. If you just had this hose hanging out the window, the hose that they give you, the length of it, it's probably fine. But if you're doing a longer run, you might want to have additional exhaust on that. All right, well, that's a wrap on the xTool P2 CO2 55-watt laser engraver cutter. I'd love to know what you think about it. Please leave those comments and questions down below. xTool is running a sale right now for Father's Day, and you can get special discounts on this or any of the other xTool products. Be sure to check those out in the links below. It helps the channel and doesn't cost you anything additional, so I appreciate you. Thank you in advance. Be sure to stick around. Be sure to subscribe if you want to see the additional videos coming up on this P2 and some of the accessories and some of the different capabilities that the machine has, and basically to get an additional update on this machine as I continue to use it and get to know it. So thanks again for watching. Look forward to seeing you again.